So now that we've got our MongoDB database set up using Docker, we can now make a connection to it and just make sure that it's set up. And then once we've got a valid connection string, we can take that into our app, our code for our API, and actually make a connection from there and use our code to connect and write values into the database. But in this web dev tip, let's just check that our connection is working okay. And I'll show you how to do this just from the command line. So normally if you've got a Mongo database installed on your system and you've got the client tools installed, and if you don't have those, you can get those from the MongoDB website. If you just simply type in Mongo, it should make a connection to the local MongoDB server. But that will be using just the default ports and no authentication. So if we hit enter just on our terminal here at the moment, you can see that we get an error saying that the connection is refused. Now there's a couple of reasons why, and you might remember from the previous tutorial. The first is because we're using Docker, we specified a different port than the standard MongoDB 27017. So we need to make that change to actually connect successfully, but we also set up a username and password for the database server as well, so we need to make sure that we're supplying that with our connection string. So in order to do that, we simply just do the Mongo command again. In fact, let me just clear this down so you can see clearly. So we say Mongo, and the connection string that we provide is a MongoDB URI. You can see it looks like a little bit like a HTTP URI. But after the 2 forward slashes, we provide the username and password separated by a colon. So to do that, we had Mongo admin was the username, and then the password was rickandroll with some characters replaced like this. And then we have to put an @ symbol in to put the server address, so that's just localhost. And then the port number. So if you remember from the previous tutorial, we had set it up on 27018 as the port number for our Docker container. So that is the correct connection string. However, there is a bit of a problem because we have to specify this @ symbol here to denote where the server address starts and where the username and password finishes. We've got a problem because I did actually use an @ in the password yesterday. So if I hit enter and run that now, you'll see it will fail because as you see, it's saying the password must be URL encoded. So if you remember from a few web dev tips a few days ago, we did cover how to encode and decode URI components using JavaScript, but essentially we need to replace this @ symbol here with a URL encoded version, which actually for the @ symbol is a %40. So let's just go along back here and replace that. So if you do use an @ or any other special characters that need to be URI encoded, then just be aware that you do need to replace them when you make your connection string. And if we hit enter again, you can see this time we're successful and we get the welcome message from MongoDB, and there's some information about the system. So generally you won't need to do much with this shell on the CLI for MongoDB, but you can use it just do some simple queries about the database or set any documents up if you need to. So just for example, for our database, say we're going to be having a collection of URLs. So we can say database.urls and then use the insert command, and then we can literally just insert any kind of JavaScript object because there is no schema in MongoDB. We can put pretty much anything we want in there. So with our API, it's going to be generating an object with a URL, a little bit like this. So localhost and the port number, and then it was just some random characters after that. Make sure we close the quotes. And if we hit enter, you can see that we get a message saying that we've inserted one document into the URLs collection. And if we say db_urls.find, we can then find that URL resource again. And that's the premise of what we're going to be doing within our code. We're going to be inserting a URL using this sort of command and then finding them again when the user uses one of the redirected links. But hopefully that's just giving you an idea of how you can use the CLI to work with MongoDB. And it's useful for testing your connection string just to make sure that you've got the right details before you start putting them into your application. So that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.